It was a cloudy morning on September 27, 1986, in Cleveland, Ohio. 2,500 volunteers from Cleveland all got together to break the world record for the most balloons released into the air at once. The event was intended to be a harmless fundraiser for the United Way of Cleveland, which looks to end poverty, but the world record-breaking event, let's just say, didn't go as planned. The city spent 6 months preparing this massive balloon launch. A rectangular structure the size of a city block was set up to hold the balloons all in one spot. This massive net, measured 250 feet by 150 feet, was 3 stories high and was made of a woven mesh material. Below this net was 2,500 volunteers spending hours upon hours filling up these balloons with helium and then letting them fly up into the net where they would be held in place. United Way planned on filling up 2 million balloons, but after several hours of filling up the balloons, they decided on stopping at a little over 1.4 million balloons. A rainstorm was approaching, and the organizers wanted to release the balloons before the storm rolled in.
Don't remember, folks, don't park on the square because this ain't the place for your car this weekend. Back to you.
Sounds like fun, David.
I
Thank you.
understand we might have a northerly wind, too, so they'll all wind up over Canada.
Finally, at 1:50 p.m., it was time to release the balloons and set the world record for the most balloons released at one time. Not only was this about to be a massive moment for the fundraiser to raise money for ending poverty, but this was also a huge moment for Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, it's your time. It's time to say yes. It's time to say it is a happening city. We are on the move. It's no longer the butt of jokes or anything. I've been in this city now for 6 months, and I absolutely love it. My wife and I have even talked about moving here, and our friends in LA think we're nuts.
With the storm rolling in and 1.4 million balloons already in the net, it was time to launch.
2, 1, here they go.
Liftoff.
Amazing. And the far end is up, and there they go, John.
The Guinness Book of World Records has just been broken in Cleveland. Over 1,500,000 balloons going up in the air at this very, very moment. Look at the cloud below. We did it!
We did it, John. There it goes. It's completely covering the terminal tower.
Oh, look at that. I want to sing up and away. It is awesome, ladies and gentlemen, to actually be down here and see the multi-colors that are going up in the air at this moment.
We did it, John.
This is it.
Let's do it for Cleveland.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no mistake on the lake anymore. Cleveland has now broken the Guinness Book of World Records and released over 1,500,000 balloons. Think of that, Chuck. The Guinness Book of World Records, the Cleveland home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All of this in Cleveland, Ohio.
The All-American City. How many events?
Cleveland had done it. 1.4 million balloons released into the air, raising $1.4 million in support for Cleveland to end their poverty problem, and one massive world record that was just broken. The excitement that surrounded Cleveland on this day soon turned into a completely different feeling.
It's been an exhausting search for these Coast Guardsmen. They've been out on the water most of the day looking for 2 40-year-old Cleveland men, Skip Sullivan and Raymond Broderick. They went out fishing about an hour before last night's heavy storm blew through. This is their boat, a pair of life jackets still in it, along with a hat and a fishing pole. The boat's motor is gone. Its sides are battered, apparently from pounding all night against this section of the breakwall off Edgewater Park. That's where the Coast Guard found the boat about 8:30 this morning.
Ironically, that big balloon launch in Cleveland today is one of the things that's making this search so tough for the Coast Guard. Can you imagine trying to find somebody floating out here or even spotting a life jacket with all these balloons on the water?
As Isaac Newton once said, "What goes up must come down." The city of Cleveland felt this famous quote a little too heavily the next day. Typically, balloons stay in the atmosphere for long enough to where they are deflated by the time they reach the ground. But because the balloons collided with a front of cool air and rain, the balloons dropped straight to the ground while still inflated. 2 fishermen, Raymond Broderick and Bernard Sulzer, had gone fishing out on Lake Erie on September 26. Their families reported both fishermen missing on the same day. The next day, the Coast Guard and rescue helicopters had a very difficult time looking for these two fishermen as they were searching through what they described as an asteroid field of balloons. 2 days later, on September 29th, the Coast Guard suspended their search and the fishermen's bodies eventually washed up on shore. The wife of one of the fishermen sued the United Way of Cleveland for $3.2 million, far more than the $1.4 million that they raised from the balloon launch in the first place. The case was later settled on undisclosed terms. This wasn't the only lawsuit that the United Way of Cleveland faced, though. Many of the balloons ended up landing on a pasture outside of the city. The balloons coming down on the pasture supposedly severely scared the horses on the pasture, and these horses ended up suffering from permanent injuries. The owner of this pasture ended up suing the United Nations of Cleveland for $100,000 for damages, and this case was also settled on undisclosed terms. Burke Lakefront Airport had to shut down the runway for roughly half an hour when the balloons started landing on the runway. There were an extremely high number of traffic collisions on this day, as many of the drivers were either distracted by the balloons falling or just trying to dodge them going down the road. And to top it all off, because of the damages caused, the Guinness Book of World Records retracted the title that had just been set as, quote, Guinness will no longer measure environmentally unsound events like balloon releases. This disaster ended up in a net negative for Cleveland, where they lost all of the money that they raised because of the lawsuits from the balloon launch. If you learned something, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments below.